If you walk along the docks of any major marina in the United States today, from San Diego to Miami, Seattle to Annapolis, you'll see something that looks peaceful but conceals a financial war zone. Rows of gleaming vessels sit perfectly still, their decks covered in dust, their windows fogged, their outboards silent. No one comes to wash them, no one starts their engines. Some haven't moved in over a year. These aren't just unused boats. They're ghost ships, legally abandoned, financially trapped, and increasingly the targets of a bizarre new gold rush. Because right now, across America, a growing number of people are walking into marinas, filing a few pieces of paperwork, paying a few $1,000s in back fees, and walking away with boats worth tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, completely legally. And they're not just keeping them, they're flipping them for massive profits, often within weeks. This isn't piracy. It's not fraud. It's not even technically theft. It's a loophole carved into the bedrock of maritime law so deeply and so deliberately that those exploiting it aren't breaking rules. They're following them to the letter, and in doing so, they're making millions, while original owners watch helplessly as their dreams are repossessed not by banks, but by strangers with clipboards and court forms. By the time you finish this video, you'll understand exactly how this system works, why it exploded in the last 2 years, and, most importantly, how you could be at risk if you own a boat, financed one during the pandemic boom, or even if you're just thinking about buying one. This isn't just a story about boats. It's a cautionary tale about the fragility of ownership in the modern economy, the hidden traps embedded in consumer finance, and how quickly an asset can transform from a symbol of freedom into a legal liability that others can claim as their own. Before we go any further, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. Stories like this expose systemic risks that affect all of us, whether we've ever set foot on a boat or not. And drop a comment below. Have you seen abandoned boats in your local marina? You might be surprised how close this is to home. It all started, as so many financial bubbles do, with a moment of collective euphoria. In early 2020, as the world shut down and millions found themselves confined to their homes, something unexpected happened. People began dreaming of escape, not in the abstract, but in the physical, tangible form of boats. With international travel frozen, concerts cancelled and restaurants closed, discretionary income that once flowed into experiences suddenly pooled into assets. And among those assets, none captured the imagination quite like the recreational boat. Dealerships from Florida to the Great Lakes reported a surge unlike anything in decades. First-time buyers, teachers, nurses, software engineers, retirees flooded showrooms, often with pre-approved loans in hand, ready to sign on the spot. Why? Because in a world of uncertainty, a boat represented control, freedom, a private sanctuary on open water. Marketing campaigns leaned into this hard. Ads showed families laughing on sun-drenched decks, couples watching sunsets from quiet coves, solo adventurers navigating uncharted inlets. What they didn't show was the reality. Winterization costs, engine overhauls, marina fees that can run $1,000 a month, or the fact that the average boat owner uses their vessel just 14 days a year. But in 2020 and 2021, none of that mattered. Demand was so intense that boats sold before they even hit the lot. Waiting lists stretched for 18 months. Prices soared. Used boats often sold for more than their original MSRP. A 2019 Beneteau that cost $150,000 new was selling for $195,000 in 2021. It felt like a no-lose proposition. Buy now, ride the wave, sell later for a profit. For a brief, intoxicating moment, boating wasn't just a hobby, it was an investment. But then the tide turned. By late 2022, inflation hit 9%. The Federal Reserve began hiking interest rates aggressively. The same loans that carried 2.9% APR in 2021 now reset to 8% or higher for those with variable terms. At the same time, the post-pandemic world reopened. People started booking trips to Europe, buying concert tickets, returning to normal. The boat that had seemed essential in isolation now felt like a luxury they couldn't justify. Maintenance bills piled up, insurance premiums jumped, and worst of all, the resale market collapsed. As thousands of owners tried to sell simultaneously, supply overwhelmed demand, prices plummeted. That same Beneteau that sold for $195,000 in 2021 now struggled to fetch $110,000 in 2024. For those still underwater on their loans, owing more than the boat was worth, the situation became untenable. Walking away seemed like the only option. So they did. But here's where the nightmare truly begins. Unlike a car, which a lender can repossess in hours, a boat is a maritime asset governed by a labyrinth of federal, state, and local laws. Repossession isn't automatic. It requires legal action, filing liens, notifying authorities, sometimes going to court. And many lenders, especially smaller credit unions and marine finance companies overwhelmed by defaults, simply chose not to act. Why spend $10,000 repossessing a boat now worth $80,000? Better to write it off and move on. So they did nothing, and by doing nothing, they left a legal vacuum. And into that vacuum stepped a new kind of entrepreneur, the boat claimant. Here's how it works. Under U.S. maritime law and state statutes like the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, any vessel left unattended and unpaid for a certain period, usually 60 to 90 days, though as little as 30 in states like Texas, can be declared abandoned. Once declared, any private citizen can file a possessory lien with the local county clerk and the U.S. Coast Guard. This lien doesn't grant immediate ownership, but it starts a legal clock. After the statutory waiting period, again 30 to 90 days depending on jurisdiction, if the original owner doesn't reappear, pay all back fees, and contest the lien, ownership transfers to the claimant. No auction, no bidding, just paperwork. And the fees? Often shockingly low. Marina back rent, $3,000. County filing fee, $150. Coast Guard documentation update, $200. Total investment, under $4,000. Now imagine that the boat in question is a 32-foot Sea Ray Sundancer, originally purchased for $180,000 in 2021. Today, even in as-is condition, it can sell for $85,000 to a buyer in Mexico, the Caribbean, or even a domestic enthusiast looking for a project. Profit, over $80,000. Legally. Ethically, that's debatable. But legally, undeniable. This loophole has existed for decades, mostly used by mariners to clear dead weight. But in the last 18 months, it's been weaponized by a new class of opportunists. YouTube channels like Boat Salvage King and Marina Vulture now document weekly saves, dramatic transformations of algae-covered hulks into gleaming cruisers, sold within days for five-figure profits. Their audiences aren't just curious boaters, they're investors. Online forums like Boat Claim, Net and Reddit's boat flipping are flooded with tips. Target marinas near retirement communities. Owners often pass away and heirs don't know what to do. Look for boats with expired registration decals and no shore power cables. Focus on states with short lien periods. Florida, Texas, Louisiana, California. One man in Fort Lauderdale told Bloomberg he's claimed 14 boats since early 2023. Sold 11. Net profit over $600,000. He doesn't even live on the water. He scans public records, hires local scouts, files liens remotely, and uses third-party brokers to handle sales. It's a scalable, low-overhead business built entirely on legal abandonment. And it's not just small-time operators. Private equity firms are now quietly funding marine asset recovery startups that use satellite imagery, drone surveillance, and AI-powered public record scraping to identify abandoned vessels in real time. These firms don't file liens themselves. They partner with local boots on the ground who do the legwork in exchange for a 40 to 50% cut. In Miami, one such operation has a warehouse filled with seized boats, some still wrapped in shrink wrap from the dealer. never used. They're cleaned, detailed, and shipped to buyers in Panama, Colombia, and the Bahamas, where US-built boats are prized for their reliability and resale value. The margins are staggering, 300% to 500% returns in under 90 days. And because every step is documented and compliant with state and federal law, there's zero legal risk. The Coast Guard has acknowledged the trend, but says it lacks authority to intervene. Vessel ownership disputes are civil matters, not criminal. The FBI only involved if fraud is proven, like falsifying lien documents. But in most cases, the paperwork is pristine. It's not fraud, it's arbitrage. Now, you might wonder, why don't original owners fight back? In theory, they can. If they reappear within the statutory window and pay all back fees plus penalties, they can reclaim their boat. But in practice, few do. Many are embarrassed. Others have moved, changed phone numbers, or simply can't afford the thousands needed to buy back a boat they already paid for. And here's the cruelest irony. If you financed your boat, which most people do, you likely signed a contract that gives the lender the right to repossess. But that right is optional. If the lender chooses not to act, and many don't due to cost or staffing, the boat doesn't automatically revert to them. It enters legal limbo, and during that limbo, anyone can claim it. One heartbreaking case in Michigan involved a retired schoolteacher who bought a 28-foot Catalina sailboat in 2020 to fulfill a promise to her late husband. When her pension was cut in 2023, she couldn't afford the $420 monthly slip fee. She called the marina weekly, begging for a payment plan. They refused, citing policy. 6 months later, she returned to find her boat gone, sold to a man who'd filed a lien, paid $2,800 in back fees, and listed it online for $65,000. She sued, arguing emotional distress and wrongful conversion. The court dismissed the case. The lien was valid. The sale was legal. She lost not just the boat, but $22,000 in legal fees. Her story is not unique. It's becoming the norm. This crisis is also exposing a fundamental flaw in how we think about ownership in the 21st century. We live in an age of digital convenience. Tap to buy, one-click checkout, instant title transfer for cars. But physical assets like boats exist in a legal framework that hasn't been updated since the 1970s. There is no centralized national registry for recreational vessels. Titles are issued by states. Registrations are handled by the Coast Guard. Liens are filed at the county level. Marina contracts are governed by local ordinances. It's a fragmented, inefficient system riddled with gaps, and those gaps are being exploited with surgical precision. Meanwhile, first-time buyers remain dangerously uninformed. Surveys by the National Marine Manufacturers Association show that over 65% of new boat owners underestimate annual ownership costs by at least 40%. They don't budget for insurance, which can double if you store in hurricane zones. Bottom painting, $2,500 every 2 years. Engine servicing, $3,000 plus annually. Or the fact that many marinas require proof of liability insurance just to berth. When these hidden costs hit, on top of rising interest rates and stagnant wages, the dream evaporates, and the boat becomes a white elephant. But unlike a used iPhone or a depreciated SUV, you can't just leave a boat on the curb. It's physically tethered to a slip, legally tied to your name, and financially anchored to a loan. And if you walk away, it doesn't disappear. It waits, and someone will claim it. But let's talk about the profiteers, the people turning abandonment into an industry. Who are they? Some are former boat mechanics or captains who genuinely love restoration. They see potential in a neglected vessel, pour in labor and parts, and sell it as a labor of love. But many are pure capitalists. They don't care about the boat's history, condition, or sentimental value. They care about the math. One group in Tampa operates like a hedge fund. They've identified 37 marinas across Florida with high abandonment rates. They've hired local scouts to photograph every unused boat weekly. They run ownership checks through county tax records and Coast Guard databases. When they find a match, unpaid fees, expired registration, no insurance, they file a lien within 48 hours. They negotiate with the marina to pay only the minimum required to satisfy the lien, often 50% of total back rent. Then they list the boat on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, or specialized sites like Yacht World with phrases like bank-owned, estate sale, or must sell fast. Buyers assume it's a distressed seller, not a legal claimant. The title is clean, the engine runs, the deal closes in days. Profit margins routinely exceed 400%. And because everything is done through legal channels, they face no criminal liability. In fact, some are now offering boat claiming workshops. $419 for a weekend course on how to find, lien, and flip abandoned vessels. Attendees get templates, checklists, and access to a private Discord server where they share leads in real time. It's a full ecosystem built on financial distress. So what's being done to stop this? Very little. Some states are trying. Florida passed Senate Bill 1028 in 2024, requiring marinas to notify lenders within 30 days of non-payment, hoping to accelerate repossession and close the window for third-party claims. California now mandates a 180-day waiting period before a private lien can be filed on vessels over 25 feet. But these are patchwork solutions. The real fix requires federal action, a national vessel registry that links lenders, owners, marinas, and lien filers in real time, standardized abandonment protocols, and mandatory lender response timelines. Until then, the loophole remains wide open, and as economic pressure mounts, real wages stagnant, credit card debt at record highs, recession fears growing, the number of abandoned boats will only increase. The National Marine Manufacturers Association estimates that over 15,000 recreational boats are currently in legal limbo across U.S. waters. That's 15,000 opportunities for someone to get rich, legally, off someone else's misfortune. And here's the part that should terrify you even if you don't own a boat. This pattern is repeating everywhere. RVs are being claimed under similar abandonment statutes in storage lots across Texas and Arizona. Light aircraft in rural airports are vanishing after owners default on hangar fees. Even high-end motorcycles stored in garages are being seized through obscure personal property lien laws. The mechanism is identical. Economic stress, plus complex ownership laws, plus opportunistic actors, chasse legal asset stripping. In a world where consumer debt is at an all-time high and disposable income is shrinking, more people will overextend, more assets will be abandoned, and more vultures will circle. The American dream of ownership is increasingly fragile, not because we can't buy things, but because the systems protecting those purchases are crumbling under the weight of complexity and neglect. If you're watching this and own a boat, here's your survival guide. First, never let your insurance lapse, not even for a month. Most marina contracts allow immediate eviction for uninsured vessels. Second, if you fall behind on payments, communicate early and often. Many marinas will work with you on a payment plan if you're transparent, but only if you ask before you default. Third, know your state's abandonment window. In Texas, it's 30 days. In New York, it's 90. In Oregon, it's 120, but only if you filed a change of address with the DMV. Fourth, consider installing a GPS tracker, not for theft, but to prove active use if a lien is ever filed. Usage logs can be used as evidence that the boat wasn't abandoned. And if you're thinking of buying a boat, run the numbers honestly. Include 10% of the purchase price annually for maintenance. Assume you'll use it only 15 days a year. And always have an exit strategy, because the market can turn in months, not years. The boat that was a status symbol in 2021 is a liability in 2024. Now, I want to pause here and ask you something. If you're finding this story eye-opening, if it's making you rethink assumptions about ownership, finance, or even leisure, please take 2 seconds to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. We dive deep into these hidden systems every week, exposing the loopholes, traps, and unintended consequences that shape our financial lives. And drop a comment below. Should the government close this loophole, or is this just capitalism working as intended, rewarding those who act fast while penalizing those who overextend? Let's start a real conversation, because this isn't just about boats. It's about what happens when legal frameworks fail to keep pace with economic reality. As we look to the future, one thing is clear: the era of casual, impulse-driven boat ownership is over. The pandemic boom created a false sense of security, that boats were appreciating assets, that demand would stay high, that ownership was simpler than it really is. But the crash has revealed the truth. Boats are among the most complex, expensive, and legally entangled consumer assets you can own. And in today's volatile economy, they can become liabilities faster than you can say, "Man overboard." The people making millions aren't evil. They're just playing the game by the rules as written. The real failure lies with the system itself: lenders who approved risky loans, dealers who sold dreams without disclosing true costs, regulators who haven't updated maritime law in 50 years, and a culture that equates ownership with success without teaching the responsibilities that come with it. Those ghost boats lining America's marinas aren't just abandoned vessels, they're monuments to a collective miscalculation. They began as dreams of freedom, of family, of escape. But when the world changed faster than anyone expected, those dreams collided with reality, and reality won. Now they sit as silent warnings to buyers, to lenders, to lawmakers, that in the modern economy, value is fragile, ownership is conditional, and the line between asset and liability can vanish overnight. And as long as the loophole remains open, someone will be waiting to claim what you left behind. Before we go, one last request. Share this video. Someone you know might be one missed payment away from losing their boat to a stranger. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because next week we're exposing how the same legal loophole is being used to seize classic cars from storage units across the Southwest. It's even more brazen, and the profits are even higher. This is the hidden economy of abandonment, and it's growing fast. Thanks for watching, and remember, in a world of easy credit and fleeting dreams, the only thing more dangerous than buying something you can't afford is walking away from it.